I shouldn't be out here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hell yes, we're gonna take your AR-15, your AK-47.
You and what army?
I can rant for just 1 minute here. You're a great sport. You have a great sense of humor, unlike the social justice warriors who are going to be out there tweeting that all the jokes are problematic. You people can blow me, you pussy fucksticks.
Tomorrow's news today.
Listen, we're going to get to this next, and I respect you.
Hey, I want you guys to yell at each other for 3 minutes while I go pee.
I got to pee too.
Okay.
14 different PhDs, experts, psychiatrists, all of them said, man, you're a really great guy, without me even asking. I was always just trying to get joint. We had joint. No, I had her joint. It all gets, well, I'm not a lawyer. We had joint. Yes, and then now she's with where, I mean, I'm not saying she's perfect, but I was pretty amazed by how she stayed on top a couple times a week and overnights and all that. I mean, I'm joint, and other stuff I won't even get into. And then it just turns into this whole fantasy land. Didn't seem to matter. The news never reported it. She went off to a treatment center in Arizona. And he's like, I had nothing to do with it. She was gone for 5 weeks. And then it just turns into this whole, test my blood. My blood. Test my blood.
Okay.
Anyways.
You are someone that I could talk to about the flat earth conspiracy. You don't believe in flat earth, but you can kind of understand where I'm coming from.
What if I finance a research ship and make a documentary? I can't go away for 3 months. I will pay. What if
How much money can you raise? We're going to need a...
Are you guys going to the moon or into orbit?
Okay, you raise the money for a trip to South...
No, there's no raise the money. I got the money.
Okay, you got the money.
I got the money. And it's got to be sad to only have an audience of people who are in basically sleep trance-like states. I mean, mainstream TV viewers are admittedly lower IQ, lower income, near trance state. And so I'm not talking to people in a trance state. I'm talking to people that are awake. Folks watching online will see the truth. A little statement I'm going to make, and then later I'm going to put online some of these documents. Take human-animal chimeras. I mean, you could type in human-animal chimeras, you get 100,000 mainstream articles crossing humans and animals, and growing in the utero body parts. Like Harvard saying fluoride lowers your IQ after just 2 years on 1.6 parts per million. That's mainstream scientific journals. But this cameraman's laughing right here, right? This guy right here. Because it's all just this distortion.
Listen, listen, this is the deal. This is the deal. This is the deal.
Go pee, man.
So we're gonna do this.
We'll send Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna do this.
Joe,
I'm gonna send someone else.
You're gonna find the edge of the world, big ice caps, cats that are knocking things off.
I'm gonna film the drop off with my iPhone.
Yes.
Go pee, man. Go pee.
I'm guilty I was ever nice to you. You're a charming guy. Well, see, my instinct's always right. Because you're a devil. It's like Captain Ahab and the whale. See, Captain Ahab isn't fighting a whale, is he? If you're a whale, you're fighting a big squid. That's me. One tentacle right now is wrapped around you. Just one.
Go pee, man. Go pee. Don't you have to go?
We're gonna send someone else, Alex.
Yeah,
but we're gonna do this.
Hey,
you know what? We're gonna do this. I don't have to be the one that goes.
I gotta pee in a minute.
I don't have to be the one that goes.
I gotta pee in a minute. Let me tell you something right now. Let me tell you something right now. I came here and I proved they're keeping babies alive and taking their organs.
How did you prove that?
They're admitting it.
Jamie pulled some shit up on Google.
No, they admit it now. I'm not stupid. I'm a straight shooter. I'm from Texas. Oh, I like you, Alex. Ugh. I like you. Alex is a good guy. Ugh. He's a really good guy. Ugh. He's a little bit funny guy. Ugh. He's wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong. You think I'm stupid? Everything you're doing is turning into pure crap. You've got a crap touch, not a Midas touch. I got all of it. You think I'm stupid? I'm not. I can see for miles and miles and miles.
That's
they're
you too.
They're normalizing it. No, the governor. Listen to me.
You really think there's people out there campaigning for late-term abortions? You think that shit's real? You think that shit's real?
Voted Monday to keep it legal.
Who would do that? Who would do that? Who would campaign for? That's
They
the most.
fucking did it,
That is
Bravo,
the craziest
and
shit
you
ever.
can't fucking admit they're fucking killing already born kids. So you're telling me it isn't real when they had a fucking vote in the goddamn fucking Senate? I'm gonna squeeze you slowly, just slowly, just very slowly till I just squeeze.
Alex, you have forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Alex. You are more than what you have become. You must make amendments with Joe. Remember your friendship with Joe. Remember.
That's a conspiracy theory.
I am ready to beat your
That's a
fucking ass.
conspiracy
You think you're fucking tough, you're about to get it. Bullshit! They're killing already born babies! Stop fucking lying! God fucking damn it! I'm getting pissed now.
Don't get pissed. Go.
No! I mean,
Okay.
you saw the... Dude, it's
He
going...
didn't
I'm
see
just
it.
fucking
But you
with you.
realize- Hold on.
Alex,
Hey,
Alex,
Type in right now.
Alex,
Type in right
Alex,
now.
Alex,
that the
I
fucking
was
Senate,
fucking
the
with you.
fucking Senate voted
Here's
to
the
kill
thing.
babies
Let me-
and they're fucking born. They tell your kids they gotta love Justin Bieber and you know, and then your children are turned into mindless vassals. They look up to some twit instead of looking up to Nikola Tesla or looking up to Magellan. I mean, kids, Magellan's a lot cooler than Justin Bieber. He circumnavigated with one ship the entire planet. He was killed by wild natives before they got back to Portugal. And when they got back, there was only like 11 people alive of the 200 and something crew, and the entire ship was rotting down to the waterline. That's destiny. That's will. That's striving. That's being a trailblazer and explorer. Going into space, mathematics, quantum mechanics, the secrets of the universe. It's all there. Life is fiery with its beauty. It's incredible detail. Tuning into it. They want to shatter your mind talking about Justin Bieber. Huh? God wants me to wage war. God told me, destroy Joe Rogan.
No, you have clearly missed the point.
Yes, sir, Jesus. I will do it. No more games. War. Ah! The real thing. War. 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 War.
Hey,
I
Alex,
was just playing with
Eddie,
you. Of course I believe that.
We went into a long conversation
I
about
heard
that.
it.
We played.
I heard it.
Okay, you heard it.
I heard the whole podcast.
Oh, you were teasing
I'm
me.
playing
Okay.
with you.
Okay.
But
Come on.
imagine my psychosis
Think
is
about
this.
what I said.
Reality is so crazy that I always thought I was so tough.
I can't believe
that
he
I
doesn't
could-
have to pee anymore.
That I gotta piss a little bit.
Alex,
the point
listen.
is that why are we debating whether the Earth is flat, dude? They have human-animal hybrids.
I have to go. I just heard the sun and moon are switching places.
If that's true, the birds would be going nuts.
Up, we just lost the lease on Capitol Hill.
Just impeach him, you stubborn bastard!
We can't impeach him because I love him.
Nancy, I know he's hot, but he's with Melania now. What am I even saying?
I'm trying to impeach him, but no one here will let me.
And then you get transported to a space prison for a couple 100,000 years. And then when you come back, you don't ever come back.
And by the way, you know, I got hairy legs that turn turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach into the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
The Clockwork Elves. I heard about the Clockwork Elves when I was a little kid. And I decided I don't want to see them. Because everybody sees them. Little goat creatures with little green hats and little green uniforms. It look just like gray aliens. Then they pull their mask off and they don't look quite like that anymore. They wear little gray masks so they don't get too scary. Because they look like little gremlins, little demons. You don't think I don't have 5 steps ahead of all this crap? And I've been a lot further than anybody that takes DMT, let me tell you. Because I got the DMT. Alex Jones got a lot of the DMT. The DMT, the DMT. Every night I go to sleep, it's like 1,000 years. I know all about the DMT, the DMT, the DMT. Just remember that. So, I made my point.
People just make jokes. They don't look at the Harvard studies. It's all just funny because people are followers, and it makes them feel powerful to just laugh at stuff. Here, let's talk to this camera. So I'm talking about human-animal chimeras. He was laughing. You know? Like 1984, yeah, the spider goats, all of it. Oh, look, spider goats. Oh, look, spider goats. 20 years ago, they had rhesus monkeys you could buy in Hong Kong, bazaars that glow in the dark that are part jellyfish. Think that's funny? They have horrible lives. It's incredibly painful for them. Do you have any idea how dangerous all the human-animal chimeras are? Do you have any idea of the superviruses and mutations that it's creating? That are cancer's way up, allergies are way up. This will affect your kids, man. This isn't funny. I've had top science talk about this. PhD, highly respected, that said that there was alienation going on. Because it's all just this distortion. Because the monkeys in medical experiments is funny. It's funny that I was upset about that. It's funny. It's something good to laugh at. It's fun to be ignorant and just be trendy. Oh, look, spider goats. Oh, look, spider goats. Oh, look, spider goats. Alienation. The literal definition of alienation was engagement. They're the people that, with the corporate globalists, helped hijack this country, and they're being torn out of control now. They're being removed like a tick off a dog's rear end, being torn off this country, and they realize it as parasites, as little followers, as conformists, posing as trendies, that their time is short. And then there's news stories that I alienating. Total complete lie. None of it true. Literally cherry-picking, twisting, and distorting everything.
If it makes it to Hollywood, if it makes it to the movies, if it makes it to our minds, if we can conceive it in our heads, I'm to the point now where I believe it's probably physically manifested.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The space-time continuum through Folk space. Unbelievable. Folk space. Unbelievable.
Aliens are real and they're coming.
And that's why he went, basically hid, rushed up against it in the 50s. And he was like, whoa, and was like a recluse after that. And then they came after him. Well, and the way they came after him is the same stuff they're doing to me, man. It is hardcore. Hardcore. So I've had the literal high-level Illuminati invite me to their meetings. And I've told everybody that. People are starting to finally listen. And I believe it now because they're getting higher order information.
I think that the key here is for people to understand that This is how...
Dude, they had people back in time trying to stop me. I don't know how all this works, but I'm telling you, there's good in the universe, there's free will, so they couldn't stop me. Sorry.
But this is what they believe. That's the key here. It's not about whether you're saying you believe this or, this is how they think. This is what they're thinking. This is how they're operating. This is how these elite social groups are operating. That's the key. That's what people need to have sink in. And people are going to want you to start talking about aliens more now that you're talking about.
Which they've now mathematically proven is there. So they're in the third dimension, but they're transmitting through a higher dimension that our brain's able to basically periscope up into, and then they're giving humanoids on this planet the dark technology to actually build in the construct so the whole system's set up when they get it. And they believe they're in contact with them interdimensionally. And it's not that they're even in another dimension. They're communicating transdimensionally over the space-time continuum through fold space. And I said, this is this whole program, and they believe this is what happens. They believe we are aliens. I'm not saying all this, but the media picks it up. This is what they believe. This is what space-time continuum through fold space.
I was ready to hear, and he crucified Christ. And he shot Lincoln, at the Ford Theater, and Alex Jones robbed Fort Knox, and Alex Jones poisoned George Washington, and Alex Jones did this, Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did this, Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did this, Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did this, Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did this, Alex Jones did that. Alex Jones did that. Total complete lie. None of it true. And serious men and women, for every race, color, and creed, know the truth. And nationalism and freedom and renaissance and true liberalism is awakening again. And all the old corporate whore media systems are going to be swept away like a big rain coming in and flooding into the gutters. So that's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. That's why InfoWars is exploding, 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 exploding. That's what happens, but that's what happens when you're changing the world. That's what happens when the old decaying system is upset by people who don't have all the answers but just aren't going along with it anymore. And so, that happened when our country was founded. In places like North Korea and Venezuela, they don't have change. They live in stagnant control. Everybody follows orders. And then the people flee those countries and come here and bitch and complain about the little bit of freedom that's left and complain about the American system of free market. And that, of course, is until that system collapses. And then, we realize that we wish we wouldn't have killed America. But the globalists want to kill, globalists want to kill, globalists want to kill America. Want to kill, globalists, Federal Reserve, want to kill America. Globalists, Federal Reserve, want to kill America. Globalists, that's the devil. Federal Reserve. Devil, that's the devil with George Soros. Hey, that's the devil with George Soros. Devil. The government-loving corporate worship system, the fake liberal system still has its tentacles, growing and doing well. And so, we hope to try to revive some of the people, just like North Koreans are in a cult, or people in Venezuela are in a cult, people in Cuba are in a cult. We're just here speaking to all the pseudo-intellectuals and fops and others and just hoping that someday they break out of the control paradigm they're in. But regardless, it doesn't matter. We're just glad to be trailblazers and be free, and we're just really, really glad that the American people are taking to wake up. So thanks for coming out tonight. Have fun with how you guys distort this. Love the comedy, love the deception. Let's keep it going. Just keep reporting on how we're changing the world. You've got to report on us and distort the truth, turn it upside down. Even though you turn it upside down, people know it's powerful because there's still the image of truth there, even though it's upside down. So we'll continue being the people changing history. We'll be the people that actually force the serious issues onto the table, and we'll continue to get ridiculed as all trailblazers are. So we love you, and someday you'll be out of your comas, mainstream media. God bless you, and thank you so much. It was clearly a joke. We were laughing about it. Let me explain again. This is a fact.
Take it seriously.
This is a fact.
50,
This is a fact.
Turn into a joke.
This is a fact. This is a fact.
50, turn into a 50, turn into a joke. Turn into a joke. 50 to a joke. 50, turn into a joke. To a joke. 50 to a joke.
How about that?
50, turn into a joke.
How about that? How about that?
50,
How about that? How about that?
50, turn into a joke. Turn into a joke. 50 to a joke.
Now what that? What happened? How about that? That's right.
How about that?
It's gonna be good.
How about that?
But the great news is, mainstream media is so discredited.
People are going to want you to start talking about aliens more now that you're talking about
You know,
You know that's how it goes.
This is their plan, people. These are demons. Just like the Bible says, it's basically an intergalactic invasion into this space through people. I'm telling you, it's what all the ancients said. It's what they warned of. It's what we're dealing with. They're demons. They're frickin' interdimensional invaders, okay? I'll just say it. Make fun of me all you want on CNN or wherever, but everyone already innately knows this. These people are not frickin' humans, okay? What is that? What is that?
You all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Kill man, kill. Anyway, hold on, I'll be right back after these messages brought to you by 420 TV.
I shouldn't be out here.
Your point is an elephant.
So would it be what it was like if it was supposed to be like what it's supposed to be like, which it never is it? Anyway, how's it going? Do I have a funny voice on? I have a feeling I do. Because I was playing with it. Oops. Sorry about that, folks. Can't ever get none of these, without fucking up at least once. Let's see what's going on in the chat room. What's going on, Scratch? Alex, nothing as it seems. Syrianification. Raven Wolf. We got Redneck Suburban. Jay, how's it going? Dr. Red Dirt, the redneck, what it is. Elena Gonzalez, the Weed Shaman, which I think might be one of the same people there. I don't know. Just saying. So what's going on? Tell me what it is. Hey, check this thing out here. If I can figure out which one it is. I think it's this one. Yeah. 7 surprising things the government UFO UAP report. Now remember, I told you they were basically going to never tell you that there was aliens of any kind. But they did admit to some other things. Let's check it out. And this is brought to you by WeirdUFOs.com. Surprising things the government UFO UAP report. All right, let's check it out here. Preliminary assessment. Unidentified aerial phenomenon. Number 1, they are a threat. Well, of course, our government would say that now, wouldn't they? Because everything's a threat. Number 2, they are nuts and bolts machines, and they are physical, according to the government. The government UAP report is super inconclusive, and that's the government's fault. Because they're not going to really let you know anything, just enough to sway your opinion on whatever propaganda they're pushing. And the government does not want to revisit Roswell, New Mexico, where it all kind of started. And this little letter in his pocket in a different picture is what led a lot of people to know that there was a second crash site, there was bodies, there was etc. And how was this guy supposed to know that people in the 1990s were going to invent a software called OCR, which can scan a document so you can rearrange or retype it or edit it or whatever? Well, they didn't know that, but it happened. And number 5, hashtag UFO Twitter is working. People are, not being too censored when it comes to this. At least as far as the civilian people talking about it. Unusual flight characteristics. But we all do that when, if you've ever seen one, that is. They had near misses with pilots. We know that if you've paid attention to MUFON reports and other things. And you can check out her YouTube channel, which is all about UFOs. Pretty cool channel. Anyway. Let's see, what else was I going to talking about? World War III. Well, they're trying to set us up for it. They want you to believe it. But where will it be? I mean, there's so many things happening right now around the world that could be the, tipping point to start an international war. But always remember, the top of the people in charge of world governance will not be affected by this in any way. Just like every other world war, they'll profit off of it. They'll profit greatly off of it. They'll take new lands, they'll make new laws, they'll suck the wealth and eat the substance out of the citizens of countries around the world. Or at least that's my opinion. So what do you guys think about the release of the documents that are still pretty inconclusive? Basically, the government is admitting nothing and denying everything. But that's what they do. It's like NASA, never a straight answer, which brings me to another article that we're going to be talking about tonight on the mini Ice Age conversation with David Dubine as soon as he calls in about 5 minutes or so. But we can go ahead and get a sneak peek of what he's going to be tripping on. I'm sure I would be tripping on it if they did this to me. So let's check this out right here. Making thousands. Where does it say? Like the big deal, like if someone's making thousands. But here, Patreon is bankrolling climate change deniers while we all burn. Climate change conspiracy theorist on
the subscription platform are making thousands. Oh my God, that's horrible. People making money for what they're doing for a living and, you know, the research that they're doing. Oh God, that's horrible. They're promising a new ice age is coming. I don't think I ever heard anybody promise that that was going to happen. What they did promise is that there's a grand solar minimum and no telling what could happen because, you know, there's cycles. So we got a good indication of what will happen. But nobody's claiming to be psychic. Come on. As large parts of the U.S. Northwest and Canada are experiencing historic heat, dome, extreme droughts, and wildfires, climate change deniers are making thousands of dollars on Patreon by spreading conspiracies to their followers about an impending ice age. Wow. A new report provided exclusively to Vice News by Advanced Democracy, a nonprofit that conducts public interest research and investigations, identified at least half a dozen major influencers who are spreading the false claim about an impending ice age that will fix the Earth's global warming crisis. And they're making thousands of dollars every month by doing so. The spread of climate misinformation is prolific on social media, as well as sites like Patreon, where users actually financially compensated through the platform for spreading falsehoods. Daniel Jones, president of Advanced Democracy, told Vice News. Companies hosting or promoting climate misinformation have a responsibility to take action to reduce dangerous misinformation, as falsehoods about climate science are every bit as dangerous as lies about vaccinations and disinformation about our elections. Patreon did not respond to Vice's news request for comment on the report findings. One of the biggest accounts spreading climate conspiracies is Adapt 2030, which is ran by David Dubine, who has 1,100 followers on Patreon and is currently making $3,500 every month from his subscriptions. That's amazing. Good job. Good job. Adapt 2030 Climate Preparedness channel at Patreon right here, where you can, buy storable goods or, all kinds of cool shit like that. But, ooh, evil. It's pretty evil. I can't believe this. The central tenet of Dubine's message is that the Earth is about to experience the grand solar minimum, an event that will usher in a mini ice age and reverse the effects of global warming. I don't remember anybody admitting to global warming being real in the fucking first place, so how could they say that? Oh, give me a break. But anyway, let's read on. This is the same argument made by the account called Electroverse, which currently has 468 Patreons and is making approximately $2,000 per month according to Patreon estimates. In a public message reported from the account's website, it argues that cold times are returning and that NOAA and NASA appear to agree if you read between the lines. Another account is called Grand Solar Minimum, while yet another is called Ice Age Farmer. A solar minimum is a real thing. It's period of least solar activity, 11 years cycle, not counting the other big cycles. You notice how they omitted that. Marked by things like fewer sunspots and solar flares. Every so often, the sun becomes quieter for longer periods of time, experiencing much fewer sunspots and giving off less energy. This is called a grand solar minimum, for those that don't know. The last time this happened was in the middle of the 11th century, that coincided with a period that was dubbed the Little Ice Age. As well as reduced solar activity, the cooling was caused by increased volcanic activity. And while the name suggests the impact was significant, scientists now agree, I guess, I don't know which ones, but evidently a couple of them, now agree that it amounted to no more than modest cooling of the northern hemisphere. But last year, as conspiracy theorists were increasingly speculating about another grand solar minimum causing another mini ice age, NASA, never a straight answer, dismissed the possibility. The warming caused by greenhouse gas emissions from human burning of fossil fuel is 6 times greater than the possible decades-long cooling from a prolonged grand solar minimum. the NASA Global Climate Change team wrote in February of 2020. Even if a grand solar minimum were to last a century, global temperatures would continue to warm, the report said, because more factors than just variations in the sun output change global temperatures on Earth. The most dominant of those today being a warming coming from humans-induced greenhouse gas emissions. They don't explain why any of the other grand solar minimums cooled the planet when there was no human consumption of fossil fuels, but I guess that's a topic for another time, and it's now 10 o'clock, so let's see what's going on Skype and see if we can connect with Mr. Dubine himself to speak for himself against this hit piece by Vice News and stuff, you know? Yeah, there it is. It's mini Ice Age Conversations. How about that? Yeah, let me check my Skype here. And we'll see what's up with that. He had another guest. He told me that was a pastor or something like that. A guest with some Christian beliefs and their opinions on what it is that's going on and you know, what their views on the stuff is, and I'll be piggybacking on there tonight, I think. I'm pretty sure of it. Let's see here. Oh, and I was going to ask you guys how was the sound, because I had to get another desk because I noticed when I type stuff, it's like overwhelming in the audio. Let me go check out the chat and see what's happening while we wait. Cosmic Purification. Black Sugar Kick-Ass. All right, that sounds very interesting. Used to be kind of decent, yeah.
Changed in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And I do welcome you this evening, this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you reside on this beautiful blue planet. We have a great show tonight. We're going to talk about Vatican and moving through with the Sunday Law. Spencer Heston joining us tonight, right along with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films, 1776, who's going to be streaming live tonight right over on YouTube. So if you want to check out the graphics that are going along with the live broadcast, we're trying to twist it into a nice visual and audio package for you. The information presented tonight, the glimpse into this global reset and what is going to be with global taxes and how business and commerce is going to be structured through the Vatican, pushed into a global agenda, and how it's going to affect your life, along with some tips and ideas, because Spencer has been out trying to get the homestead up in a desert environment. Ransom also lives in a pretty dry, warm place. So it's going to be an evening full of preparedness and trying to get prepped out in different locales. I can talk about East Tennessee, what's happening here with the nice flow of rain this year. Not like last year, it rained all the time. Things were moldy and wet. But this year it seems to have dried out just to get the perfect amount. But we're going to be going through some ideas tonight that I hope will open your mind to the control mechanism that's put in. This whole thing with the Great Reset. It's not suddenly because these leaders of the world, self-proclaimed in their Club of Rome, etc., believe that they have divine right to rule. They've stolen it, and it's a certain type of personality that can exist at these higher levels. Sociopaths is basically how they're categorized, with some psychopaths as well. Most people who have empathy and resonate on a spiritual level do not want to go into this highest realms of political office, especially leaders of nations. It's just not for the average person, because you are an average thinking, spiritually connected being back to source. But it seems that the way these tests and these positions have been allotted to people, it only is of that like mind that has taken over. Light versus dark, whatever you like to call it. But this Great Reset is taking another step forward in terms of a chapter unfolding now, where even Klaus Schwab coming out now saying the world needs to devise an enormous amount of overseers to police all speech, to only allow you to have a certain amount of narrative that is pre-screened through the Global Reset Club of Rome persons before you're allowed to see it, and that's the way it's going to be. That's the way they want it. And this is part 2 of, and then the economic reset, the collapse part 3. So as we go through tonight's program, hope you get something out of listening to it. And I'm hoping you're also, you know, as we've been, Ranson and I have been talking about for months and months and months, trying to plant something this year, just to try something new, to try to perfect a skill set, see what works, what doesn't work, you know, in your own food growing arena. And since vegetables are plentiful at the moment, make the mistakes on trying to store it, can it, and preserve it right now while it's not going to be a life or death situation. You know, try to learn how to dehydrate things, puree things, and turn them into sauces and liquids, and then freeze that. And, you know, see how much storage space you have before you run out. And you'll realize that very quickly the amount of storage space we have in our freezers is oh so tiny if you're going to have additional stored foods. So, you know, this program's about tonight is preparedness, being able to get ready for your families during these changes, because it seems that whatever just shifted into a higher gear suddenly. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Spencer, the guest, gets to go first, and Ransom, please feel free to chime in with the thoughts, because I know you have a million billion good thoughts. And Spencer, welcome to the program.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. I know you're far out in a remoter location, just as I am.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm just grateful. Branson, it's fantastic to meet you as well, sir. I cannot express enough the need for people who are seeking truth at this time to work together and to really focus on bringing the solutions to help each other out. And almost over a year ago, when I was first introduced, actually a couple of years ago, I just want to back up and really see how I was connected to Adapt 2030 after I had been very strongly at one point in my life, very, very believing that there was a certain climate change that was indeed the reality and the importance of renewable energies. That indeed I still believe is a good course in terms of renewable energies, but I think it's important for us to focus on the right kind and take an objective view to be able to really peel back and see what is really happening. So my particular approach isn't necessarily to go to war, even though it is evident that there is some particular agendas once you follow the stream of thought. But just within all fairness, if I were to objectively and humbly take a different approach and maybe learn a thing or two that could add on my life of learning, I would hope that indeed that others may be able to do the same. And through time and being able to come up within my own decisions and conclusions based on a vast vast amount of information that David had done, it just really started connecting, and I started seeing things, and it just really started making a lot more sense. So I don't want to get too much necessarily in my story. It definitely was a lot of providences just to stay definitely right on gear there. Most recently, one of a great thing that we are missing out on is there's a glass flow event coming up in November, I believe, of this year. I just recently had learned of it. And what is occurring is within that is there's a lot of religious leaders banding together with a certain particular organization that is pushing very strongly to fight climate change and believing that we need to indeed fight climate change. And just as I had thought, just to go straight essentially and direct, is from the pandemic, since everything was on pause, it could have the appearance of the reduction in these carbon monoxide emissions, because of course, well, when everything is shut down, it would obviously make sense. So from that, it would be able to open up the door to go, well, since that had occurred, what if, just think of it, what if we assigned the whole world to take one particular day off to continue to reduce that, because the impact of climate change is a direct proportion to the pandemic. Now, I want to play on the side to go, well, if that was the case, and it was the importance of wanting to come back to God, and that would indeed be Sunday, why then is there a pre-existing blue laws on the books of the United States of America that was once wanting to be pushed? And that was back before CO2 emissions existed. This is in the late 1800s, into the 1900 range. This had already come up once before. There was a great religious awakening, and the purpose of that really is to restrict the liberty of conscience. Now, let's say, for instance, if indeed everyone needed to come back to God and that day was going to be Sunday, for instance, even though the true Sabbath is Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, and many theologists would all agree with this. Of course, these points I would like to go and expand over the course of time. It's definitely a mouthful just out the gate. I think a point was brought up. There was a fantastic lawyer named A.T. Jones, and he was a person who spoke, and he was an individual who fought for the liberty of conscience. And I believe a point was given, well, you keep the seventh-day Sabbath. We all wanted to have Sunday. How about we make it a Saturday law? And I believe the point was brought forth. They said, well, I would equally oppose it, because those are what I believe. And God in no way, ever, would force the dictates of your conscience for forced religious observance. So he spoke to the principle, in which case we see what's taking place. And what I stand for is the liberty of conscience and the freedom to choose. For instance, you could see a paradigm. I will actually do a quick overview. We see in the beginning of the book of Daniel, there was 4 young Hebrew men, and they were presented with a health crisis in the beginning right there. So in fact, I will actually go there just to really be able to bring it forth. In the first chapter, Babylon had imposed health mandates. And the leader of these young men was very afraid that if you didn't eat of the king's meat and drink of his wine, then, oh my goodness, my job might be on the line. Could we parallel that with certain businesses that might be open? Now again, I'm not going to say, oh, you need to, take your pose on what you want to do with your body or not. I'm not going to push my beliefs on that. My point is the ability to be able to choose, and we'll see where that is so important. Based on fear. He said, no, but then those guys said, no, look, trust me. We want to keep our Hebrew ways. We believe in the God that we know. And they actually ate their simple diet of the same thing that we are seeking out to grow your own food. good, clean vegetables, the nuts and dates and things like that. And in 10 days' time, he said, and in fact, they said, hey, I'll tell you what, put us to the test. We'll even prove you. Even prove us. And they did. You know what happened? They found them 10 times better than everyone else. And God gave them knowledge and skill and all learning and wisdom. That continues, and that's Daniel 1:17. So at first they were faced with a health crisis, under fear that if you don't operate on certain mandates, oh my goodness. They said, well, hey, hold on. Just let us try this. It was proven effective. It relieved. What's soon to follow is then, in the same book, that's when the image was made. And that's when the importance of bowing down to their religious observance was to be followed. And if you didn't, you were going to be put to the death. Now, even in that, so that test, you can see where we have a parallel, where we are possibly now. But because they maintained, and God had carried through them, he was going to carry them through continuously. Because in the book of Isaiah, there's a powerful promise I actually want to share. 43:2, which they would have had available. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon thee. You fast forward to three of the four. Daniel was not there in that scenario, but those three there, they didn't bow down to that religious observance. They wanted to keep their liberty of conscience. Well, the king had brought them in and become even more not too happy with the situation. Said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Hey, we're not gonna bow down. We're gonna keep what we believe, and we want to speak nicely to you." You could read that. It goes into Daniel chapter 3, addressing him correctly within his level of authority. It wasn't being, riotous by any means, but just a humble, peaceful observance. Not any violence. Not trying to tear down statues. No, nothing of that nature. Just going, well, hey, that's no problem. This is what we believe again. And they said, that's okay. If we're going to be delivered to the fiery furnace, that's no problem. God, who we serve, is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, they will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Well, that just made them all the more happy, as you can imagine. They heated up 7 times hotter, and even the guards nearby, throwing them into the furnace, got all burnt up. There they are walking in there, and Nebuchadnezzar had seen something. 3 men had get put in, but he saw a 4th, and he said, behold, it looks like the Son of God. A man just came in contact with the God of the universe, and that promise was fulfilled. They had came out, and they were completely untouched, no burn, no nothing. He had a huge, huge transformation. And he realized the true God of the universe had delivered him. And I believe the lesson indeed was able to be set free, and the same deliverance is that we're going to be experiencing here and having incredible parallels for our time. And what I would like to stand for, employ, is just the same as taking 2 sides of the coin to really unfold, and really the importance of, before being able to break down prophecy and how that all goes through, that's just a high-level few points. I myself, as a continual student of that, am in touch with people far greater in knowledge who have been able to really employ and that I've been learning from. But the foundational part of that, the foundation of the foundation of heaven and all that Jesus Christ has created for us, is love. And the foundation of that foundation is freedom. And I, my friends...
Spencer, I'll stop you for a second. You talk about the Constitution and those rights that they're not given to us. Those are God-given rights that are inalienable to us from the Creator itself. So, the governments of the world will try to, say that the dictates and the mandates of the Constitution, we'll use the United States, for example, come from us through authority. We grant you those rights. No. Those are God-given rights. And Nebuchadnezzar, super famous through history, you're going back into... what? Post-Sumerian coming out through that era, through the Assyrians, the Hittites, and then we get back in, we're talking far. So why is Nebuchadnezzar still within the realm of almost everybody knows that name? Like, how did that name survive for, 5,000 years? And so many, even Julius Caesar barely holds on today, but why did Nebuchadnezzar survive such a lengthy time? I mean, what is encoded in that name keeps getting brought forward in terms of ancient knowledge? You talked about, that would be considered an alchemist or something. If you were able to control fire and not be burned, imagine the level of somebody going, whoa. They're actually controlling physical matter. And this descendancy from Nebuchadnezzar all the way until, you look at presidents across the world and kings, etc., that whole royal clan and royal class and central banks of people intermarried in between the royalty, all stems from that same bloodline back from Nebuchadnezzar's time.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. I tell you, man, Nebuchadnezzar was loved. He was loved by his men. Nebuchadnezzar was brilliant genius. He would have been a Nikola Tesla of his time. I mean, he was not just a heir to the throne, like some tyrant. And even seeing his transitions and him becoming a saved man and going through such transitions, and I believe a major part of that is that he was given the dream that explains the fulfillment of prophecy to the T. And such a dynamic, important thing that is explaining exactly where we're going. Man, how could you not have that particular name? His importance is just so high of a man for that time. And it wasn't all negative. He had achieved incredible feats within Babylon. I mean, you would probably know more on the research of all the wonders that happened in Babylon under his rule. I mean, there's definitely some pretty intense things, but there was a lot of innovation. And likewise, what can we learn? What can we learn from the past? What can we learn from our history and apply it to our time of now, so we don't repeat it? And I think that person was such a dynamic player, just as much as Daniel was brought forth to be given those visions or the dreams of being able to interpret that which he had a dream of and didn't even know what it meant. And then Daniel was given the ability to interpret and what that meant. So yeah, I think Nebuchadnezzar is someone to really look and research just as much as Daniel. Look at the lives, look at what was accomplished, and what can we learn from those lessons and apply it to our time. Man,
nothing stays the same, because you got to think about the Fertile Crescent back that time. Now you look at a lot of the iconography in some of these temples and what are the relics from the museums and still standing areas of temples, etc. around. But a lot of them had the iconography of the lotus and also the mushroom. And then, you go in the Hittite civilization and they found just cache after cache of those clay vessels that used to transport wine. Well, those were also packed full of honey and psilocybin mushrooms. So you wonder, with what was given to us naturally as a way to connect or reinterpret something in a waking state, how all this blends in. Because today, if you were to try to put that in the same context, you'd be like, nah, it's impossible because mushrooms couldn't grow there. It's way too dry. And this whole flip of Fertile Crescent, they called it the Fertile Crescent for a reason. It was literally, like you say, quote unquote, the land of milk and honey. So the biggest takeaway from that is things that are always changing and shall continue to change into the future in cycles. And Ransom, yeah, sorry to cut you off there, man. You want to chime in for a second? Because I know you're chomping at the bit to throw in a few ideas here and spin it up. So, yeah, I didn't mean to keep you on the edge there so long.
No, that's all right.
Ransom, come in.
That's all right.
Likewise,
it was quite interesting.
Spoke a little right here.
Quite interesting listening to it. I was thinking about the main point of that story about no real idea that you're going to believe in needs to be forced upon anyone. So any kind of force that's put on you for any idea, whether it's talking about climate or talking about religion or government or medicine, these ideas shouldn't need to be forced on anyone if they're the correct good ideas and that's the right way that they're being put forward. And you were talking about the only time in history that's written down talking about something to the effect of a Stargate with Nebuchadnezzar. And I often think about Nebuchadnezzar because it really intersects with the time we live in now. A lot of people don't know, but about 250,000 cuneiform tablets were found in Iraq prior to the war. They were going to be, translated and studied and things like that by some German and French archaeologists. But instead, Saddam Hussein started acting like he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar. And I think that was kind of a tilt of the hat to the world elite, that he had found something important. And then, we go into war right away for that. And we don't go seize the oil fields, and we don't do these other things. But what we did do is make a beeline for the Baghdad Museum of Natural History. And then somehow, right in front of all of our troops, all of that stuff got stolen, and God knows who or where it went to, but obviously had some ancient knowledge associated with Nebuchadnezzar. And you talk about that story of the Hebrew. Nebuchadnezzar knew that his people knew nothing about it, and he wasn't, he didn't have a problem with calling for the people that actually were experts on whatever it was that he was messing with there, which were the Hebrew. And it talks all about how they came with their special suits, special dress. They knew how to deal with whatever it was, whether it was technology or spiritual or what it was. They knew how to interact with it. And it's weird that we get to a point now where the world's full of war, and that part of the world is so pivotal about what's going on with the world government now. And I'm sure that you guys know we're on high tensions with not only Russia, China, and between these little shatter belt situations we have going on, like in the Ukraine, Taiwan, and then Israel and Iran. So it seems like we're just repeating those times, and they're using some of the maybe same technology possibly that they were using then. But overall, that story is about, he wasn't trying to force people to believe the same things at that time. And what a revolutionary idea that you don't have to, convert at the point of a sword, so to speak. And I know you guys know what I mean by that. So that's really interesting stuff. And we live in a time now where we're being forced on every idea. And if you don't like their idea, you get censored, punished, and they're going after certain groups specifically, which, like I said, it seems like times are repeating here very, very forcefully.
Spencer?
Yeah, I definitely agree, Ransom. Man, that is absolutely incredible. And that's my biggest press. And I heard this, and I would love to take the similar stances that I may not agree with everything an individual may say, but it is important that we may be able to, in the right approach, stand even to the point of death for them to receive the liberty to at least speak it and consider it. Because without that, then you might hush out the very solution that could save your life, or the very solution that could save the life of a loved one. So the biggest point is, and what Jesus Christ had come to do on this earth was, he even had restored us and came and put his own life on the line so we can have the freedom to not choose him. Now think about that for a second. Through the immense eternal power of love, would put their self on the line for the purpose of saving them from herself, but even more so they can have the free will choice to not even choose a solution. And I think that's really what we're really facing right now. And like Benjamin Franklin says, where liberty dwells, there is my country. a founding father. And really going back to the founding fathers, even within the different organizations they were part of at that time, but those principles of freedom and the liberty of conscience, that is the most important thing to stay centered on. For instance, learning and keeping an open mind. I mean, I've learned so much incredible things in my conversations with David Devine, tapping into different things within vibrational frequency, different things within the power of thought, new solutions, learning so much if I can keep my mind open, knowing where my foundation and the rock of where I can stand, but yet still be open and receive new light, new information, and put it through the lens and the correct interpretation. Go, wow, that's powerful. But if people are continued to get censored, how are we going to get those solutions? And that's just going to parallel in every part of life. That's my stance. And that people can have the freedom to choose for their own mind, for their own mind. And just let them be free.
Yeah, I like that when you're saying, put it through your own lens and see if it resonates with you correctly. But the ability to do that, I don't know if I would say 50%. I'm not being, demeaning to 50% of the population on the planet, but they rely so much on being told what to believe, what to think, and resonating the same narratives again because they watch the news and they'll have a water cooler conversation about something they saw on the news and everybody agrees and everybody gets social credit, like, yay. To put that opposing information through a different lens and put it up 10x magnification like they do on some of the nasal swabs and find different things inside there that don't seem to make sense. That's a whole different gamut and a whole different road to go down, but most people are not prepared to take that giant step of, okay, here's the information and you have to put it through your own lens and choose whether it's right or not for you. Because just the sheer amount of information would overload most people of, all right, now I got to do all the research over here, and I got to do all the research over here, and I got to do all this research, and my life becomes very complicated for me to make up my own mind. And this is where a lot of people set that defaulting, well, if it's on the news and the government said it must be true, I'll just go with that sort of ballpark. Most people believe it, and most people stay in that camp, so it's safe there. If you go with the government narratives and you're assured your corporate job's going to stay intact, you're assured your neighborhood and the suburbs, etc., is mainly your neighbors are going to stay intact. Your social media accounts will pretty much stay intact as long as you're going with the narratives. And life is pretty easy if you go with the narratives and you regurgitate and just follow what was told to you, because most people don't want to make up their mind. And Ransom, you told me before about food buying and being in supermarkets. When there's 30 choices of ice cream, nobody could make a choice, but there were like 3 choices everybody could easily make a choice. It's very similar out in the world we're looking at today, I think.
Yeah. I was showing the audience some of these, headline articles about the World Health Economic Forum, who is going to now try to censor any information medically that they don't think people, should hear or that they think is misinformation. Google wants to filter all of your news results now, and they're going to be putting up, like warnings before they go to websites. And now with this article that they put out on Vice, I read that actually right before we came on air with you to the audience. You can see that they're going for all ideas. It doesn't matter what the topic is. They're going after the people. And if you don't say word for word what the authoritarians are telling you to believe, to think, and we know that these authoritarians have strong ties to communism, and that's the type of government that they're trying to usher in here, you'll know that whatever your belief is, whether it's from science to religion, it doesn't matter. They are going to go after you if you have a different opinion on something, if you question their facts, or even if you use your own facts that are also the same facts that they use to determine something. We're getting into a real scary world where even, a thought can be criminal. As you can see in Canada, they're arresting pastors, all over the place because they're trying to continue worship amid the supposed lockdowns. And I think it's ironic that we talked about it last year, how they were going to give everybody probably a little bit of freedom during the summer and then lock everything down again. And that seems to be exactly what they're doing with these so-called variants or whatever. A lot of countries are now shutting down. And then you're hearing from every authoritative source that they're now going to be censoring you and punishing people. So it doesn't matter if you're someone that has Christian beliefs. As you know, Mao Zedong said that religion is a poison, and it seems like the world governance force that we're under now has those same opinions. So it doesn't matter what you believe or how you believe. If it's not their belief, if it's not their facts, if it's not their story, you're going to be, attacked. And pretty soon it'll be physical attacks more than just trying to give people bad names over the internet or call people conspiracy theorists or whatever they might do. So I don't know. It's scary times as far as free speech and the freedom to believe in what one wants to believe in.
Yeah, let me toss the one thought there, Spencer, before you jump in. I read an interesting article in Ohio that a judge is telling anybody who's going to go on parole that they have to get the jab or they have to spend the full entire jail sentence. So that now they're putting it down to the point of, yeah, you can go out on parole, but you have to get the jab. So I'm starting to see this in an enormous amount of places now, and I'm trying to, screen grab all these articles of talk, because in the beginning it was like, oh, it won't be required. There'll be no passports. You can travel freely. You can do what you want. And how they've slowly drip-fed it in. Well, no, J.P. Morgan says you can't, or those go, yeah, it was J.P. Morgan. You can't even go to their office building. Clients included now. You have to show your papers before you can go inside. And it's just this bevy now of things that you're going to have to jump through the hoops. And, in the beginning, it was all, we're not going to do that. But how quickly they lied. It was 3 weeks to flatten the curve. Now where we are a year and a half later, where even to do the most mediocre action in society, now they're going to start checking your papers, please. You have no right to know. Spence, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, that was that's a really good. It really helps dovetail, and I think that there's an important quote I'm looking at here. I believe he's a founding father, Maximilian Robespierre, says the secret of freedom lies in educating people, whereas the secret of tyranny is in keeping them ignorant. Interesting. And you can see that those that control the press control the people. Now, I don't want to say that. Let's just say, for instance, there is not an agenda. Let's just say, for instance, there isn't something that's trying to lock things. Let's just say there isn't all of these particular ideas. These outlets are still needing to produce money as a company to then produce results for their investors. So, and the best way to do that is the human mechanism back there is, the fight or flight. So you got to keep drilling consistent amounts of fear to keep your attention towards that thing, because you're competing with billions of dollars of their marketing. So once you bottleneck that and funnel it, and you can see how a lot of social media, I think it's called the social dilemma, that this a person had put on a fantastic documentary about how actually if something is free, you essentially are the product, and they start psychologically funneling you towards some particular thing. And again, the stance is freedom. And like you said, man, if you get to that point, then you go, oh my goodness, there's like a sea of information. I have to have like 10 extra lives now just to find and figure what is and what isn't. Well, that could be another thing to try to ignore a lot of the noise and cut down. Take times and carve out start with 5 minutes of maybe just meditating. And I would take a section like a promise in God's word. The one that I've always go to, Jeremiah 33:3. Call unto me and I'll answer thee. I shall be great mighty things which thou knowest not. Quiet your mind. Turn all of these things out. Get back in touch. And I truly believe that you could be able to filter out a lot and be able to, the dots will start connecting. But again, I just see that as the principle of a repeating thing where it's it's the stimulation of an event and the solution, and the event and the solution. The way to really to go into that Stockholm syndrome is you can create the electroshock therapy and then a treat, electroshock therapy and a treat, electroshock therapy and a treat, electroshock therapy and then a treat, and you get so psychologically warped that you have an improper boundary and a codependency as this supplier because you're just in this shell shock, and through all of this open close, this that, we're subconsciously being directed towards, this is that I'm okay. You can, I think it was who was that Russian dictator? Stalin.
Oh yeah.
I believe that he had said something like, you can watch this, you can take a chicken and plug its feathers and do all this crazy stuff, and it'll still come back to me and eat out of my hand. And so we go, well, what can we learn there? We don't have to live. You can live in freedom. If people like out in Ohio, if they're going, hey, again, if a person wants to choose what they want to do with their body and their health, then let them choose. I'm not saying do or don't. What I'm saying is, hey, give them the freedom of choice. If there needs to be some certain health mandates or some criteria, okay, let's really look at it. They've had pandemics in the Old Testament, and they had their ways of going through it then. There was not the same level of, medical things happening. I don't want to go down that route too much, but the principle is just the ability to freedom and handle things, hey, in a way that could work for both sides, but still maintaining that freedom. And that's the big thing there. There's another point that actually it would take at least about a half hour, probably 45 minutes of time. I don't want to go there too much, but the core of the method of biblical interpretation, essentially it's unlocking the secrets of the Bible, how it interprets itself, that allows any type of information to go through a filter, which is major foundational. I would love to get on that, maybe not on this call, but I think another time. As actually, David, thank you so much for helping me get started to start launching and just being able to speak out at this time on just starting my own channel in itself, still in the development right now. And I would love the opportunity to go over that, because that at its core is so phenomenal, so beautiful, and allows people that place to go, that gives you that filter, to go, oh, okay, I can put it through this filter and analyze it in a way. But I would love to.
What the filter is. Ransom, what filter are you looking through?
I'm kind of, I guess with my age, I've decided I don't trust anything. So I research every single thing that I want to know about myself, and try to use critical thinking on it, and even never take anything at face value. But at the same time, we're getting to that point where just doing that is being insinuated as some kind of criminal act if you actually do your own research. And this is reaching into everything. Doing anything yourself, from defense to growing your own food, is becoming looked at by the authoritative people as some problem. So it kind of goes back to your freedom of speech. And what really trips me out is that there's so many groups now arguing about their group rights, when they don't realize that if there's not freedom of speech or these other freedoms for an individual, no group can have those rights either, because they're just groups of individuals. And, so we're sitting here at a time where our own, society is trying to stifle freedom and expression. And with that, whether you're Buddhist or Hindu or whatever your beliefs are, if you can't practice your beliefs, as a Christian, or explore it or study it or research it yourself, you are not a free person. And that's kind of where we're at. And we have all of these people like you and me and millions of other people that are are just doing it anyway. We're continuing to be free people no matter what they throw at us, lockdowns, muzzles, whatever you want to say. And it's beginning to be where, it's kind of like a zombie movie where you can point out the other kind of people, which is kind of dangerous, that they don't believe the same beliefs as you do. And that kind of happened with this recent face cloth ordeal that we've been going through, where they almost separated us very easily into two camps that were kind of willing to almost go at war with each other over something that none of us really have the facts on. So, I don't know. Studying every kind of philosophy and, earlier I watched your video about having all the little different sizes of mason jars that you can kind of save. And we just came across a bunch of old salsa jars, and they're the old kind that have like a cup, it has all the measurements on that. And just being like self-reliant allows someone to have peace of mind in their own mind, because you're not really interacting with all of these other people that fall for mass brainwashing, is what I'm going to call it. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, let me throw a quickie out there. I came across a couple of videos today. Somebody sent me links, and people I resonate with and I talk with and send messages to, whether I call or we just text. I get a lot of leads on stories and things. I'm very cautious about giving up any personal details when anybody who sends me links or stories. I always keep that super close to the chest. But they sent me a couple videos that showed where Bluetooth was enabled on certain people who got the jab whenever they'd moved toward an electronic device that was wire connected that allowed Bluetooth connection. It would try to connect to them. So the story was they were following this guy around in the beginning, like day 1 or day 2 after the first initial thing. He's kind of like a little sick, like, I got a fever. What? Okay, he got better. But then he's like, comes back to this. It was a bar or restaurant. They kept, one of his friends was talking to him, and they went through 3 iterations of his experience. And the next time he comes in, and he's looking pretty like solid. He's not wearing a face cloth or anything. It's like, man, every time I go near something, a Bluetooth device wants to connect to me. And they're like, nah, man, you're kidding me. He's like, look, the phone. He puts the phone down and wants to connect to him. So then, he talks about things around his house want to connect to him. His car wants to connect. Everywhere he goes, some electronic device wants to connect to him as a body. So then they talk to him again like 2-3 weeks later. I don't know the time. It was in the future a little bit. Guy's all looking super worn out, super like frazzled, super depressed, whatever. And then the same person asks him again, hey man, how you doing with this whole Bluetooth connectivity thing? And he just kind of loses it, and he's like, let me walk up to your TV. And he walks up to the TV, and lo and behold, the screen goes black and says, do you want to connect to him? And they're starting to get all these weird stories about all these things happening at the moment. And the reason I brought that up is watching this program called Campus Reform, where they have people walk around and they'll go to university campuses, and there's like the talking point of the day. They try to just see what the general average university student's thinking about stuff. So they're out in the middle of like the quad or something, like the public huge area in the middle of the grassy area. And they would walk up to people that were wearing still today, even though all the mandates are removed, and they're still wearing like double masks and everything. Like, why are you still wearing that? Well, it just makes me feel comfortable. And just in case those people that, didn't get it yet or whatever, I just want to make sure that they know that I know that they know that I know I'm a good person, that I didn't want to maybe get them sick because I'm wearing this as a huge sign that I'm on that camp. So Ransom, you're talking about this whole, very visibly recognizable. There's people who are still holding that so tight that, you walk down the street and you still see people out in the open air wearing those things. And, it's such a signal. It's a virtue signaling. Okay, I'm one on the side over here, capital L side,
Yeah.
It's a signal. They're putting up a huge like Roman candle up there that I'm still on this side, and look at me, I'm still wearing the thing even though I don't need it, won't help, doesn't protect. And I'm just doing it for a virtue signal and also flagging my allegiance to another side. Whether you're wearing a British uniform or you're just a colonist over here wearing regular street clothes and out in your farming, overalls and coveralls, it's the same exact thing, which is spooky to see it. This allegiance between the two sides is being born in visual right now, recognition.
Yeah.
So Ransom or Spencer, I'm done talking. Y'all can throw with that. I tennis that one back and forth.
Well, just short there. It's kind of amazing. We live in a time where everybody has their own facts. That's part of the problem, I guess. That at the same time as not being able to believe anything, there's several different facts out there for people to throw back and forth at each other, and none of them really do their own thing. So they're just mimicking other sources of info. Go ahead, Spencer.
Yeah, but Spence, you were saying you're trying to rip in on something that would take 45 minutes, but coming back into the Sunday law thing where they're going to permit or not permit a certain amount of businesses to be open and for you to get taxed on a certain level and be able to have commerce, buy, sell, trade. When we come back in, and that was the reason I was going to that Bluetooth thing, because also seeing a few other videos of somebody who had found a way into the database of each one of those jabs has a specific running operational system code number behind it, and they can track everybody in real time. So somebody had sent me this link, and it's a bit weird for me. I'm still trying to determine even what I am looking at. But it kind of fits in with the Sunday law. Like, people are being tracked. You're going to be allowed to buy or sell or not sell. And this is what I'm really curious to see where you think this might be taking us with all these things we're seeing up to this point of, it seems that Wi-Fi-enabled technology is connecting to the people who have the jab, as well as now this database has been found where everybody that has it has a number that's following them in real time or something very similar to that. Like this database thing, I'm still trying to dig into, and it's just, I saw it an hour and a half ago, and it was the most perplexing thing. Giant files on everybody who has this thing with an operation code inside there, as well as what they even call it, like a software EO2 something. I don't know. I'm still trying to dive into it, but definitely has to be some correlation here. And we're not talking, maybe we are talking market debate. I don't know, but somewhere that Sunday law fits in with your movements tracked, your ability to buy tracked, your ability to transact tracked. That was for you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. I could see a lot of things I always see is where people are going to believe that a particular chip, or what I say in the mark in the hand or in the forehead, was going to be that mark of the beast. Actually, it isn't. But you can see how the connection will indeed allow a further restriction of freedom and continuation of just tracking, every move here and there. You see the advancements within blockchain. So within blockchain, there's phenomenal things, but at the same time, because it can reconcile within seconds, you could, for instance, let's say you're standing at the checkout counter and you can within nanoseconds see if your social credit score would allow you to continue on with that purchase or not, based on just how fast things are in live time. And let's say, for instance, if I saw a post here recently, definitely everyone has to do their own research, whereas you can store eons of information within your DNA code in itself. And I thought that's so interesting. Actually, as it says, as in the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man began. Back in those time frames, the antediluvians were getting deep into very similar things right now, interweaving of DNA code, messing around with, animal human migration, a lot of really interesting things that was kind of left out of the books, and you gotta dive in there. So if you see the repeat of that, and even before, at that time, what had occurred is that had it not had rain on the earth, because the dew would come down from the precipitation all up within the atmospheres. And so if it had not rained and a message was given that it's going to rain, you'd sound like you're nuts. And you want to build this old school boat, that sounds like it's double nuts. This guy's off the rocker. But he went and he employed everything that he was instructed and believed to do, and even a lot of people were employed by him to even build that large vessel. And of course, when the freedom was basically people not wanting that protection was allowed to be given that freedom, then you see the withholdings of the spiritual ability of withholding that atmosphere back came down. It wasn't God punishing or, oh, bam, I want to flood you. More so, look, I'm here to provide life. But of a consistent rejection, then finally you're given the free choice, the God of freedom. Okay, if you don't want life, then I will give you what you would like. And had to let them give what was wanted. And all but a few, obviously, were saved at that time. How that connects within here is, you could say that there's a constant wanting of trying to rebuild a Babel tower, or try to do things in our own power, or later we're not going to have a flood again. You see the control mechanism, and I wanted to just add in there simply in 2 Corinthians 3:17. This is a really important statement, because we're going to see some different things, and when you get into, hey, we're going to intermingle religion within your freedoms and all those things like that. No, I think that, like Ransom said, hey, people need to have the, if you want to be a Buddhist, if you want to be Hindu, that's incredible. I will love to learn from all walks of faith, and I have, and I continue. But as soon as you're like, no, you can't because of this, or, whoa, that's a problem. 2 Corinthians 3:17 says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. So that means if there is a religious push that would restrict liberty, the Spirit of the Lord truly is not there. And I think at its core, if religion is being used to restrict liberty, that right there just shows me where the Spirit of the Lord is not. So, I would love to hear, Rancid, you had some really awesome thoughts, and definitely with what you're saying.
Yeah, and Ransom, go with the Chimera, because he hit that on the head right there, and I know you are so into that right there. And we'll be right back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm with Spencer Heston and Ransom Godwin from 420 TV Freedom is Films tonight. Short break here for 2 minutes and 2 seconds. We're going to continue with our conversation about Sunday law and how cycles of history repeating different magnetic fields referenced in religious texts. And join us for the second hour. It's going to be an incredibly interesting, uplifting, great reality.
FreedomSlips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
lying to yourselves because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us. Good evening.
I hope you're awake yet.
I think we're almost back on. Oh, shit.
I didn't mute myself. Oops, I was talking over the commercial the whole time. Oops.
To decimate your entire existence.
Bankers and the elites. The war is coming. And it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet. Not giving up. Revolution Radio, 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 Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back to the second hour of Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, right along here with Ransom Godwin, 420 TV Freedomist Films, and Spencer Heston. Now, before the break, we were talking about in the times of Noah, when DNA was being tinkered with, chimeras were being formed, which means for me, something in tech is repeating in history. And for us to be even able to talk about these, seemingly disconnected events, across the blogosphere right now, so many forces are trying to stop even just simple conversation of fact between friends, people who might want to be interested in finding new facts. So if you do find and value free speech, consider a donation right here, freedomslips.com, Revolution Radio, to keep this type of venue on air so we can continue to bring you information just like this. So how is the past connected to what we're seeing right now? Because before we went on the break, Spencer was breaking down this whole firmament where there wasn't so much rain as Noah was told in foretelling that there would be a massive rain. Now, obviously, there were cracks in the earth and then the ocean spilled out as well. It wasn't just from the above ground water rainfall. It was earth cracks and fissures and jets of cold water oozing from the earth as well. There's more water in the crust of the planet than there is on the surface. So think about that for a second. The magnetic field was completely different at that time. But the stories of the tech being equal to what we have today in some shape, fashion, or form. Because if they were going to tinker with DNA and create chimeras and try to create species, build the Tower of Babel, and, obviously the engineering was quite advanced if they're going to build something that is tall as the Dubai Tower. And there's a lot of history that's being hidden from us. And to have these conversations, you can't talk about it on this venue or that venue. But Ransom, I know you're so much into, the chimera and the illusion with the DNA splicing and gene manipulation that's going on today, that they would try to, and I'm saying they as in Council for Relations, central bankers, whatever it might be, government institutions, to try to pretend that an alien would drop down onto the earth. And you said you don't agree, or you don't believe most stuff, because imagine if you were able to gene splice and create not Dolly the sheep but entirely new species by combining DNA. you could make it look like it was an alien, and our recollection, how they program us in the media of what aliens look like, could you not create that same exact thing? Obviously you could. So Ransom, I'll let you start off because I know there were a few ideas there before we going on break that I know you could respond to in like a fifth of an eighth of a second.
Yeah. Well, let's start off with, this concept of the mark of the beast there. Me personally, I never really thought it was going to be a chip or a number or anything like that. I always thought that it was a pretty straightforward parable about what you think and what you do. If you have the mark of the beast on your forehead, you're probably a person thinking evil thoughts. And if you have a mark of a beast on your hand, well, your hand is what you do. If you're doing evil, you indeed have the mark of a beast, whether you believe it or not. You're acting like a beast. But let's take it technological, as we were talking before. We have all kinds of people, and this goes right into the chimera thing, actually, in my opinion. We're taking lots of quote-unquote medications with lots of different DNA and cell lines. We're adding different compounds that are not supposed to be probably in your body, or we would have never came in contact with them normally. But now it might as well be. It doesn't matter if it's just your evil thoughts or a chip or a number or something like that, because it would intersect in this way. The beast system, if you want to call it that, is kind of the New World Order, or the world governance of everything, a communist kind of Luciferian system. And, if you were going to interact with anything in their economy, you would kind of be, by choice, picking some evil things, because some of the corporations that you choose to do business with or whatnot, a lot of people unknowingly would be intertangled in these wars. And, you can get into the central banks and everything. So if you're tied by a social credit score or some kind of chip or even a medication you got in your arm where you're being monitored, you would indeed be taking part of kind of a beast system, whether or not it's a religious thought or not. It's still kind of the same idea. And this gets into the chimera thing. We don't have to ask if we could create animals. They're doing it right now in tech labs all across the United States and every other technological country like China, France, England, etc. There are companies that are mixing human DNA with animals on large scales. And it's a state secret to try to find out what's going on with some of these programs. There's no telling what they're making. They kind of give us these little anecdotal versions of it, like, spider goats and pigs growing human organs. But they're doing much more than that. They're combining embryos of different animals and seeing how long they can go. And they're also passing laws to allow them to continue test longer. So do I think if a UFO showed up on my doorstep, not that I disbelieve that there may be extraterrestrial life, however, I would have to question it, knowing that the technology is available and ready right now for them to make a creature that's, 80, 70% human and, 20 or more percent of something else. So what if they crossed it with an amphibian, a salamander, a frog? I mean, you can go on, and there would be a infinite number of alien-looking creatures mixing and combining DNA. And then you go back into the ancient past, whether it's the ancient Aryan Indus Valley. They have depictions of chimeras all the way into the Greek times and the Roman times. They were still kind of depicting it. So indeed, maybe at one time they had the technological level, because really a lot of the Genesis stories and Sumerian tales are one and the same, and they talk about the same things, and they do talk about it in a technological sense, whether or not they're talking about building a giant boat that can withstand a massive flood, or you're talking about chimeras being mixed. Even the story of mankind sounds technological if you want to get into that, but somewhere along the lines, someone has already attempted to kind of stray away from the normal human spiritual evolution of its body and mind, and indeed we live in those same times now. So actually, if you're a person that's been taking medications, I'm going to keep saying medications because that other word is a trigger word, you're injecting RNA and DNA into your body, making you a chimera. Now, when you add the ideas of nanotech and other things like that, you are not only a chimera, but a cyborg. And, it's the limitless imagination of what these things can turn out to do. But it's hard to ignore or, kind of be naive and not say that they're not altering the course of human evolution with these technologies.
Spencer, that's right up your alley.
Yeah, that's incredible, Branson. It just indeed the mark of the beast isn't necessarily a technological connection that you're bound to, but indeed, actually, it is what you're thinking and choosing with your thoughts, and then what you're physically doing with your body. So, for instance, you might be able to, through the use of fear and misinterpretation, not preserve your liberty of conscience and go into that particular Sunday law agenda, which you will be rolling out. And then you might think, well, I can just go along with that, but then maybe deep inside of my conscience, I'm just going to do it to stay with the program, but then secretly down deep inside, I'm really not a part of the program. That's where it actually enters into your thoughts, and it would be you're physically doing that thing, even going against your own conscience, based out of fear and not love, that a way will be made. You can be self-sustainable. God will provide in those times, and has given us this great instruction on how to go forward as I continue to learn and learn from each other. So yeah, that's phenomenal. And that's what I've come to understand myself is that in itself. And the beast mentality is essentially fear over faith. Perfect love casts out fear. And if that fear-based continuation will lead you to do some pretty interesting things. Now, it's good to have a sense of, I guess, discernment and apply that, but you can see where that train of thought leads, and then that would cause people to try to do some pretty interesting things that they might not normally do. And hey, I think we've all made some mistakes based on high levels of not really thinking correctly, and where that could step in. So that's just really amazing that you're talking about how that really functions, and really it says in that freedom. And then when you start tinkering within the RNA and the DNA, that's definitely a scary road to go down. I would not recommend it at all for anyone, predicting, trying to go or try to maybe clone people or blend two different species or a hybrid. It doesn't end well. And I think that you're taking something that is natural and trying to make it not natural, the best way I could put it. And I don't think that there has ever been a good ending when that has happened with all the interesting experimentation. So really when you can just go within the laws of nature, yeah, there's the answers. I mean, look how, for instance, the bumblebee. All right, here's an interesting one. The bumblebee, through its creation and its natural nature, by physics, shouldn't be able to fly. But it does. The bumblebee doesn't know that, so it just flies. It didn't need to be modified. Sounds pretty good to me. What do you think, David Ransom?
Yeah. Ironically, I was showing people, we were kind of talking about this weird stuff, and some of this weird stuff even happens in nature. I was showing the audience, just right when you were talking about a bumblebee, about this single bee in Africa that's making an immortal clone army of itself, so it's like replacing. And I keep coming across these analogies kind of between humans and bugs. So I read this article, just skimmed through it real fast, and it's kind of talking about a similar thing to a story I talked about, the communist ant, before on your show, David. This one's kind of like that. It makes its own clones. They are all identical, and they behave all the same way. They don't work, so they collapse the colonies by replacing the regular honeybees that are doing their kind of natural thing, and then they move on to a new hive and replace that one. It's kind of bizarre because it's kind of like this communist mentality of groupthink. And then at the same time, the analogy about, how certain people with philosophies don't feel like they need to earn or be self-sufficient, but instead kind of eat the substance of the other citizens around them, not only spiritually, but physically. And, we talk a lot about the times we're coming into. Our government is kind of like these clone bees in the way that they eat the substance out of the hive in an artificial way. We're kind of coming to that point. So, I kind of go back to this saying that a lot of people joke about, how even an atheist is not an atheist once, they're in a foxhole or, they're going off a cliff in a parachute or something like that. For a split second, their logical mind takes over and they realize that there's a creator of the universe and that they're kind of bucking that idea, always only with the fear of death. And, our government, that's what they do to us right now. I mean, we're in this constant state where they have the public in a clone mentality and also keep giving them these new things to be afraid of, whether it's a pandemic or a new world war or, some amphibian looking thing in a spacecraft that just lands now that they've totally, admitted, and this is breaking news. Now, maybe it could be disinformation from the government, but they've released their UFO report talking about that these craft are indeed physical objects, nuts and bolts, and that they don't want to talk about them, but they're not denying them, but they're not going to say that they're extraterrestrial. A lot of people believe these are interdimensional demons. The list goes on and on of what they could be, but it kind of makes you wonder why the government wants to be the only entity that has contact with this. And when you get into the writings of the elite, they don't go for the more creator of the universe creating everything. They more believe in the aliens made us, and then somehow the aliens were just created randomly out there in the universe, even though if they're basing most of that on Sumerian text, cuneiform text, and even the Anunnaki in it, whether you believe it's a mythological story or not, they believed in an all creator. So that's funny. Even the possible people, and I'm going to say people because even they were described as biological flesh beings, believed in an all creator. They didn't believe that they were God themselves. And so we kind of wrap around till now where the elite are trying to take the position of an almighty and disconnect everybody from source or God or whatever they believe in. They don't even want them debating these ideas. So they're going to feed an information programming through media, movies or whatever. And if you buck this at all, you might just get an article written about you that defames you, if you know what I mean.
Hey, could I chime in on that?
Yeah.
I could, yeah. So that was the article from Vice News written about myself. Now, the way the Vice News article was written, at the least it's defamation, slander at best. And the way that Vice News wrote it, they didn't understand the basic science of interglacials to full glaciation, to mechanisms of how solar activity goes from a solar maximum to a solar minimum. But on longer time frames, it comes into something called the grand solar minimum, which my channel is all about. They kept talking about the temperature, and the whole reframing of it was, David here at Adapt 2030 is saying that we're going into a full-blown ice age that's going to cool global temperatures. And went into this whole straw man thing of this guy made money on Patreon, where I have 1,100 people that follow me every month and support the work because I do, the podcast and I do the YouTube channel. But it was never about the premise, and I kept getting put into this climate denial thing, climate change denier, which for me is a little insulting because I've been standing here for 7 years saying the climate's going to change too fast for humans to pivot to a new way of life or pivot to a new crop growing species in a certain latitude is going to happen too fast, where we're going to start to go into food shortages because the climate's going to shift too fast, and we're unprepared, and we're unable to have conversations about how fast it's going to shift, and look into the past and see what has happened to prior civilizations, prior societies, when these cooling periods come and the grow seasons shrink to the point where food gets incredibly expensive. It upsets the entire economic spectrum, where almost everybody's earned a dollar is going into food purchase. So everything around on the periphery crumbles in that kind of expenditure, disposable income thing we understand today. So the hit piece that was out there from Vice News, and they, pinged it back to some other advocacy democracy group that was saying, well, we're trying to find all these people who are spreading climate myths. Yet they quoted James Hansen in the article to say it was the most ridiculous thing, because almost everything James Hansen has said about ice loss. First it was, and Peter Wadhams is another one, and they have all this list of people that were, gave all these, the Arctic's going to be ice-free projections that have never come to fruition. They need to point the finger back at themselves and look at some of these higher level people who are getting millions and millions and millions of dollars of funding, who've made bad call after bad call after bad call. And they're trying to squash the conversation on anything. They want no grand solar minimum conversation at all. They want no discussion on cycles repeating. Government's understanding the cycles are repeating, and we have taken no action for now. At the end of this year, you are going to watch food prices spike to the point it's going to start to upset society. And I was saying the assets have already been positioned in place, because since 9/11, you have to think about how the world's changed, how much surveillance there is now, how militarized police forces are, and everything is ready for this type of civil shattering and disconnect and just unraveling of all cohesion of society, because people can't eat. That's the main theme. If you go back through history and you look at all the past, say 5 grand solar minimums, you could even say 6. If we go back to the Homeric minimum, let's say circa 400 BC, Homer, same thing. You follow these trends every 400 years and the society resets. And this was the discussion that I'm going at, not a full-blown ice age. The way they frame, and then the very last paragraph of this article from Vice News, it was like, yeah, these people are talking about a full ice age, or also, and then there's other accounts on Patreon that are also talking about this, this, and this, and this. So they tried to lump everything in at the end, and it was very, poorly written. The person, or the news organization, had no understanding of even the most basic, rudimentary kindergarten level understanding of the solar system and how the sun works. They even had no reference of how large the sun was in comparison to the Earth. They didn't understand magnetic fields. They didn't understand how the variance of a solar minimum or a solar maximum affects even the basic jet stream patterns and the ocean currents for the ocean temperatures on the planet. And people in the entire, if you trade grains, you are following El Nino and following La Nina, which is based on a solar pattern. When we come into low solar activity or high solar activity, the Nino changes, and the Arctic oscillation changes, and the North Atlantic oscillation changes. So just the basic grain trader understands all these cycles that are triggered by the sun on the 11-year solar cycle. But the author or the news organization Vice didn't even have the most basic understanding of even what a grain trader would understand on how the sun pushes different climate cycles on an 11-year cycle. And they have the audacity to come out and try to paint you into a corner of, he's talking about a full-blown ice age, where they didn't even understand interglacials either, which was the saddest part. How do you have somebody working at a news organization like that doesn't understand the difference between a 100,000-year cycle and a 400-year cycle, writing an article to target, to try to destroy reputation in a slanderous manner? which is the whole thing. But I appreciate the free advertising, because thank you, Vice News. You know, I got, about 15 new people joined my Patreon in the last day. And my viewership on my Adapt 2030 channel, got 10,000 views in the first 2 hours on my newest video. I appreciate the free advertising. But, looking at it as an organization from one journalist to another, I am an accredited journalist, and you probably didn't know that there, Vice News. The way that the journalism was done is actually an insult to the profession. The way that was taken so far out of context, and the way that the news organization didn't even preview the article before it was released, with so many disconnected points that even the most basic rudimentary person reading that is going to go, wait, that makes no sense. They've embarrassed themselves journalistically by writing such a hit piece in the first place, so you can see right through the whole narrative thing. I mean, did they have nothing else to write about? Do you know how many problems exist on the planet right now? And how much conversation we have to have about families working together to grow their own food, communities getting together to grow their own food, ways that we can get off the supply chain system because it's not functioning correctly, and as we move forward, food's going to get more expensive. And a lot of solutions need to come instantly. We squandered 7 years trying to suppress speech. And that's all they had to write about. And the whole thing was, they were pointing and saying, well, these guys like Christian at Ice Age Farmer and Jake and Mari at the Grand Solar Minimum channel, they're making money. Okay, we have a thought that's saying we're coming into a repeating cycle, that food is going to get expensive, it's going to shake the economy, and we need solutions now. And the whole hit piece was about, they're not allowed to talk about that anymore. We have to remove them all off social media, because anybody discussing anything Grand Solar Minimum is a threat. It is a direct threat to elitists being called out that they understand and know the cycles in advance, and they're riding on top of a natural cycle with their agendas to put in place, like all these things are happening and manifesting on an organic matter, when they're not at all. These changes you're seeing across the climate, across the economy, and across society are cycles, pure and simple. And if you understood the onset date and the onset mechanisms and the triggers for the onset, that you would understand to put your actions, as we see now, the vid, in play to put even more control over people and access to resources. Because in 2019, an enormous amount of things happened that, all right, atmosphere is changing. Because, when you talked about it, Spencer, back in Noah's day, when you say that the firmament was there and it would just dew into the morning with precipitation and it didn't rain, that was a different magnetic field state. The atmosphere was compressed in quite a different way, where it held water in a different state than it does now. Our atmosphere is incredibly thin, going way up to the ionosphere and the electronics, or the electric bands. But when I look back a year and a half ago and see Pluto's atmosphere collapse, fast forward 6 months, we watch Neptune's atmosphere reverse. A few months back, Uranus just starts off sending off all these X flares. Saturn's coming off on some ridiculous arcing blue arcs going off onto the rings. Jupiter is flaring off at 10x the normal aurora. So those of you who are looking at Jupiter from the ground, and you're seeing blue halo around it, that's not your eyes, and that's not our atmosphere making tricks on the coloration. It's at a 10x increase in auroral activity on the northern and the southern hemispheres. So if you're doing this 6-month projection inward, and you look at these elites who follow the cult of Saturn, the next planet that's going to start flaring off around November of this year, where there are going to be visible signs in the skies that you will see this with your own eyes, without a telescope, without a camera lens. You're going to watch Jupiter and Saturn start to glow in the skies. Some magnificent event is going to happen. And it's not the 2020 Great Conjunction. That was a mark in time that said, in earnest, we're in the age of Aquarius. Energy is going to move faster. But you got to realize the elites only have a year and a half left before. If you're talking about 6 months in transition from planet to planet, moving in on these massive electro events, electromagnetism is about the best way to describe it, where these torus fields are starting to interloop and interact with each other, from the sun's decreasing magnetic field to the second magnetic field forming in the outer solar system, and the toroid waves looping on top of Earth's magnetic field. 6 months between the planets starting to have massive events happen on each one of those. So then you got Saturn, and that'll bring us up to November of this year, 2021. 6 more months brings you to Jupiter. Okay, that'll bring us into what, May of 2022? Then it's going to be Mars at the end of 2022. Then our Earth gets smashed on 2023. And how many timelines have you seen across the blogosphere about 2023, 2024, massive event, reset this, reset that, da-da-da? This is what we need to be talking about. And the whole time we're going to get drugged along as, oh, this is happening because a man made this. This is going to happen to this. No. Think about, and I'm not going to bag on the church too much here, but you got to think about what were the mandates to run around the planet for 500 years and pillage, destroy, and genocide cultures across the continents, retrieve all that, and bring it back to central repositories. Could be museums. Vatican Museum's a good one. There's an enormous amount of other, from the British museums all the way to repositories inside National Geographic. And the gatekeepers of information, they're not going to let it go. So over 500 years of collecting, let's use it in a polite form here, 500 years of, you've collected all of the artifacts, all of the written text, all of the codices. You have all of the archaeologists that understand all of the languages written to describe all of these events, including the hieroglyphs. So you can piece together with precision, probably down to the year, if not the month, when transitions in the heavens would change, understanding how human perception would change with different resonance fields from the sun increasing or decreasing, how our brains would perceive reality in the third dimension, and then how you would react as a unified government body. Well, we're coming into a time right now where the electric field across our solar system is going to vibrate faster. So we as the human are going to start to perceive different light frequencies, different hearing ranges, different things in reality. That's why a lot of people are waking up and go, whoa. How many, and I'm going to ask you, everybody out there listening, how many times have you heard in the last 6 months somebody say something that you thought in your wildest dreams you would never hear anybody ever say anything like that, ever? Like my mom said this, my dad, my uncle, my sister, my neighbor, whoever it is, my boss, could be anybody. Like, man, I never heard him even. That's the most ridiculous thing. I thought they'd never ever say that. That's the craziest thing they've even said to them. That's the quickening. That's the perception of reality change. Now think how you're going to manage that through the collapse of the agricultural system, the introduction of a new economic system, cryptocurrency, for example. And how would you manage the descent into chaos, the reassemblance and the rebirth of into the new world order? See, these cycles have been known. And this whole hit piece from Vice News does not want me or others to talk about this and put it in a fashion that it makes sense for people listening to understand, especially with timelines. And I'm going to add one last thing here. And this is the craziest thing. 48 hours prior to that hit piece coming out in Vice News and the whole advocacy democracy thing, putting out that secret document secretly leaked to Vice News, I'd spoken at the Dollar Vigilante conference with Jeff Berwick. With the same timelines, with a 100-slide scroll deck on a 100 slides PDF, PowerPoint, if you will, that I just told you about, with 100 slides with information, and I rolled through that. And within 48 hours of me putting that out publicly, that hit piece came out. So something I referenced in that slide deck, and I only talked maybe 1/10 of what was in that information flow. But the time frames there on these planets changing is obviously a trigger for somebody that's in power that does not want this information released. So to be sequestered and suppressed and censored for about natural cycles in the solar system is beyond me. But the way they referenced it with talking about full-blown ice ages and, it was definitely a hit piece. And we've hired some counsel because of this. And that's all the more I can really say about that. But I'm going to stop there. I rambled enough.
I just wanted to make one point here, and I want to show some people in the audience kind of what I'm talking about. So, they kind of attacked you in that article for talking about, different cycles, and your channel, you talk about how food prices are going to go up. And we've been talking about that for a long time. And, they say the same. What's funny is that they're saying that you're saying something different than sometimes they say. And I'll show you how this is very deceptive stuff here, trying to make you feel bad as a human. Okay, so it says drought's toll on U.S. agriculture points to even higher food prices. Prices of milk costs, beef, pork, etc., etc. But what's funny is they go through this whole thing and they talk about their little factoids that they give you, which, you might agree with or argue with, but it says during relatively mild summer last year, it talks about last year having 19% of the continent was in a drought until June. And then it talks about exceptional drought began to spread in the West. And then it says by June this year, several Western states were engulfed in extreme and exceptional drought. Now, it's funny that they leave out that New Mexico, Colorado, and Montana and Utah are having some of the record-breaking cool temperatures right now, while other people are having hot temperatures. And I noticed that they left out, because they're showing New Mexico in this big heat map, they're leaving out that monsoon came like a week early this year. And, it rained more in the last couple days here where I live than it usually rains all year. So we've got a lot of rain, low temperatures, but they conveniently leave out all of this information in this article. But they do agree with you as far as food prices going up. So it's weird that you would get attacked for talking about food prices going up and the climate changing. Because that is exactly what they switched from global warming over to calling it climate change. And there's not one person that I know that ever argues that the climate doesn't change. What we say is that the climate changes, and you can see a periodic cyclical nature to it, where you can mark out specific times in the past that are similar to now, similar conditions, and what that might mean for what's going on in our present time. And it's funny how deceptive they write that, because everybody knows that there is climate change. All of the old civilizations of the ancient world probably experienced some kind of climate change in their time. We know that like the Crescent Valley and the Fertile Valley there had big aqueducts and hanging gardens and all kinds of stuff. If you have delved into any history, that part of the world was had lots of trees and forest and stuff, from the pyramids all the way over to the Sudan that's now a desert. And, places like Peru, where the Nazca civilization lived, and the Paracas people, they were there farming, and, they had ducks and ponds and riverways, and then it turned into a barren, dry area. So we never argued that climate change is not the thing. We're actually saying that climate change is coming, and that maybe they're downplaying or not exactly comparing it to the right cycles like they should be. So I don't know. That was just a quick point to show you how deceptive an article can be, just leaving out or omitting information that's readily available.
Yeah, that's I'd love to chime in on that. It's easy to, you can definitely target one particular thing that may be happening, and then build an entire case and point to supply that point. But then how about taking the objective view and just giving an overall global picture, actually what's happening? Because in my understanding, as I've been learning, is within the grand solar minimums, it's not necessarily this ginormous huge ice age like the movie Ice Age that has been coming out, which I thought was pretty interesting. Usually we get things out in entertainment before they happen, and I thought it was very peculiar how so many shows had been coming out and movies regarding Frozen, Ice Age, Game of Thrones, I think, which had to take place during a solar minimum, if I understand correctly. I haven't watched that show, but someone was sharing something to me about that. Well, that's kind of peculiar. Why is there so much attention or things towards that? But it is the ability to actually see extremes taking place. So, though it is on my understanding a continuation of cooling, you will still be getting extremes as that goes in that trajectory. So you could then target one level of extreme to then build a case in point. But if you're able to go to a 30,000 foot view, for instance, and get the bigger picture, then you could go, oh, wow, okay, wait a minute. Where's this trend with these jet streams going out of whack? Oh, wow, wait a minute. You have changing grow zones? Wait a minute, there's an extreme drought over here because things are shifting. Wait a minute, why is there caves that are in this particular area and there wasn't necessarily the rivers that are going through? Wait a minute, you mean in the Bible that I will do a new thing and I'll make rivers in the desert? I believe it's Isaiah 43:19. Hold on, is that physically happening too? Interesting. So, yeah, I think that definitely you could try to target. See, nothing can be against the truth but for it. And that's the most beautiful thing, is nothing can be against the truth but for it. For instance, there's a case where there was a very strong organization that was trying to restrict liberty. And it was when the Bible was being put in a printing press, and they were actually they were sending those out and distributing them. People were getting set free from bondages and beliefs and, this particular dark age era, so to speak. Well, they were after these people who were giving free press information for people to see the truth as it is and become liberated. Well, one idea they had is a person within in that particular hierarchy went and bought all of the Bibles, all of them, bought them all. Well, that was their way of trying to restrict that freedom of the press at that time. Well, all that did was supply more funds for a better press to distribute even more. And when they finally caught up, the same particular organization, which the Bible points clear, which links back to that Sunday law and a connection within the Vatican, not saying necessarily anyone associated with the particular denomination is all going down there. There's lots of incredible people, pure, awesome, fantastic individuals, but at a higher level, you got to see the bigger thing. Well, anyway, so when they finally caught these freedom press individuals, they caught up to them. They're like, how in the world were we able to keep producing this? This guy over here, he went and bought them all up. And it said, well, actually, if it wasn't for the abundant donation by that person there, we wouldn't have had the funds to keep going at a better rate. So thank you. So you get to the principle that nothing can be against the footage. If you'll try to push harder and restrict. All that's going to do is just do the opposite and allow that to actually become more readily available, because people are going to start to want to look upon themselves and allow the principle of that to actually give birth and continue on.
Yeah, let me throw a quick thought in there. Just 2 history lessons here. Turkey tried to forbid the printing press, and then we saw how that worked out. And China also had closed off to any Western powers, and then 150 years later they came back with just the most massive, superior firepower, and that's when the Opium War took place. So you see, whether it be Turkey restricting their printing press, and then 100 years of time passed them by, and they were so technologically behind that they've never caught up, even though Turkey was in the world itself the most advanced power of the time. And then we saw the same thing with China. Once they closed themselves off for 100 years, they were so far behind the ball, they finally just got caught up these last couple of years.
You know, that's tripped out. I forgot to say one thing about that, you know, the article of how they manipulate everybody, where they were talking about the drought. They failed to mention that they dumped 90% of the snow melt off in California into the ocean that they could have filtered and used for city municipal waters all up and down the state. But they chose to make a drought because, you know, global warming and all of that. I mean, it's a bombardment of mistruths. Even if, you know, we were all to agree that the globe was warming, shouldn't they be in trouble for dumping all the fresh water out in a supposed drought? But no, they're going to blame other things for it. It's so bizarre how they twist and contort things. And like that hit piece on you, most of it is not so much that, you know, they want to point out that you're making money or anything. It's that they get to throw these titles at you like conspiracy theory and denier. That's what they're going to start doing to everyone. And it's funny from a, you know, kind of a Christian biblical point that, you know, there was such a big deal about denying Jesus right before he died there. So it's funny that they use that word denier about everything. And a theorist, they never say that the theories are wrong. They just say that they're, you know, and they've kind of dropped it over the years. And now they just say he's a conspiracy person, not a conspiracy theorist, but just that you say there's conspiracies. And to point that out, that there's something wrong with that, it's just bizarre how we've got to the point where just simple debate or questioning ideas has become, you know, such a radical or revolutionary act, you know, in an empire of lies.
Yeah, Spencer, continue on with those thoughts there, if you could.
Yeah, it's interesting when you go into what's this entitled conspiracy theories and things of that nature. You know, just looking on here in Acts 23:12. Here's just pulling a text. You could pull many because I don't like to just take one and make an entire line of doctrine or thought of just one particular thing, because it says here a little, there a little. Let it precept upon precept, line upon line, and that's essentially how you can actually see, like you say, come to those conclusions. Acts 23:12, when it was day, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink until they had killed Paul. Now, Paul is obviously speaking, who was once Saul and was the highest opposer and highly against Jesus and the Christian faith, until he had a one-on-one supernatural direct experience with Jesus. Now, Jesus had already ascended into heaven, but when he came back, he had a body that walked on this earth that would walk through walls, that could eat food, and able to reflect something that was pretty incredible before he ascended back to heaven. Of course, after he was risen again, which is a humongous miracle in itself. So notice that when you get into, well, this is a conspiracy, and there are these typical, you know, these things. Well, that's just, what does that even mean? You know, for instance, if there's that happening on that side, and they formed a particular conspiracy for a certain agenda, then what side of the coin does it really lay on? You know, this one text that's really important is actually, I'm going to find it here for you. It's in John chapter 16. John chapter 16, and this is a really, really incredible principle. Verses 1 through 3, I want to share this. These things have I spoken to you, that you should not be offended. They shall put you out of the synagogues. Yea, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God service. And these things will they do unto you, because they have not known the Father nor me. Now notice that is actually speaking to people who are going to have a particular religious connection, but they will be doing what? Killing you, thinking they're doing God's service, because they didn't know me or the Father. Saul was within that category, within a huge misunderstanding that God kills no man. And so they had this huge press to go on that, to restrict those liberty. and try to snuff out that which was his life. But if we have the opportunity to go in and see who God really is and who freedom truly is, whatever may come, you could live and receive and enjoy that freedom. And again, it's the principle of the liberty of conscience. So when you see that they can gather together, the kings of this gather together to form a conspiracy, for instance. Well, if you want to push that, then is it just as equal to consider, well, what about the other side? What is and what isn't? I think it'd be a really good opportunity to speak, and I would actually hope that there would be open dialogue to have conversations before really locking down measures. I mean, it's pretty tough if you make your living and let's say you're a content creator and you're producing a lot of phenomenal things like the channels that I've been able to learn from and provide so much great and connect community and positive, powerful positive impact, but yet their livelihood may be threatened by continuing to produce that. Why is it not able to then, well, hey, can we have an open forum conversation to truly speak about this before just certain things, measures are banned or taking place? Hey, let's see both sides. Let's see what's going on. What conclusions, what actually thing could be gone to before just, nope, crucify him, shut it down. Whoa. Okay. Now I can understand a pausing of some radical things, but it doesn't mean you just like that's it and no more without conversation and a way of coming to solution. So I think honestly that's what we might desire and hope, that continual conversations like these happen, that we can have maybe difference. Let's say, for instance, I would love to communicate with people with highly different opinions, because you can have adult conversations and leave shaking hands going, wow, I learned something today. That was really good. Versus, no, opposition, boom, 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 boom. Just my thoughts on that.
Whatever happens, I believe I'll be guided by the light. So whatever happens, happens.
It's happening.
Why are they afraid of the message of that? See, to point out that the cycles are here, and it seems that government and elite are riding on top of the natural cycle with advanced knowledge to pre-place already known events that will happen. Why is that such a dangerous thing? Okay, and in almost every video that I do, at the end of that, I say, go do your own research. I've left all the links in the description box below, along with the images, the stories. Go do your own research. However far down the rabbit hole you fall that's how far down you go. But don't believe me. I say that in so many videos. Don't believe me. Here's all the links. Go do your own research. And I still believe that. Everything that we're talking about tonight, nobody should believe anything we've said. Nothing we've said should be believable. It is your job to put it through the lens, do your own research, and find what's right for you. And I'll make that claim every single time I put out a piece of content. Believe nothing I say. I'll present the information, but you do your own research and try to disprove that. And I try to use science and fact, so it's very difficult to disprove, because peer-reviewed science, etc. And I'm done, Ransom.
I just realized that we didn't even talk about the Vatican, and oh my God, I got a lot of stuff to say about that. But I guess we'll have to pick another time, because we're kind of rounding off the hour. I enjoyed it. It's weird that that's what it seems like the elite are most afraid of, is that different groups of people with different religions exchange ideas and are able to walk away from that not only learning something probably, or learning something about it, from their own perspective, but just the idea of all of the people talking together. See, there's this story about the Tower of Babel a long time ago, where everybody got separated because for whatever reason there, but it seems like man and the elite are trying to take that position of judgment and do the same thing to, kind of confuse the groups of people on the planet. And right now, it's so funny that they want to unite as a one world governance while feeding the public this idea of groups and group rights instead of an individual's connection with freedom and the creator theirself. So I kind of wanted to point that out. I mean, that seems to be the most important objective of theirs, is to cut off people from source. Whatever, whatever you're believing that source is. I personally believe there is an all creator and that he created everything and for a reason. So I should be able to believe that without having hostility towards me, and I should be able to debate and learn with people. And exactly what you said, if you don't believe something, then start doing your own research and come to your own conclusions and your own opinions. And there shouldn't be any governmental or, mob type mentality to try to tell you that you cannot think. I mean, for God's sake, think about that. We live in an era where people are trying to prevent you from the simplest thing a human being can do, which is think for themselves.
That's incredible. I would love to leave. I would love to right off the hour, actually, with this question.
Yeah, you have 5 minutes left. Go.
So that was incredible. I just gotta say, much love and respect to both the gentlemen on this radio show. I'm continuously learning and truly enjoying this opportunity. The thing that really rounds in, why would you want to control something? Why would you want to control a narrative? So check it out. If you knew this science repeating pattern was going to happen within a certain time frame, and you wanted to stimulating creator using HARP weather machines and satellite and all kinds of advanced technology, that you can have a floating city and a floating city of China in the sky that seems so real, or a whale coming out of the ground and splashing and it feels so real.
Thank you for joining. Hope it has stimulated your thoughts of mind, body, and spirit. Dave Devine signing off with Lance Godwin and Spencer Heston. We'll see you next week.
Well, there we go. We got cut off. He got cut off of his thought there, but I think we got the gist of it. Anyway, I wanted to cover some news real quick. I kind of was throwing some headlines at you guys, but let's just round it out and talk about this. Do demons, are they on the earth already? And if they are, does it have to be some kind of weird interdimensional spiritual being, or can it just be some crazy lunatics manipulated by whatever forces are out there that seem to be driving people to such insane things? But anyway, let's cover the news real quick, and then I'll sign off. Look at this. CEO of trans group labels women who complained about a man's exposing their genitals to the kid as horrible. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this. But basically, she's complaining that her small children, I'm not going to play the video, but she's complaining that her children were subjected to adult genitalia, which it shouldn't even matter if it was a woman, doing that or not. Let me see. I got a message here. What was that? Oh, I'm still on the call? Oops.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, wow, it froze. I think it's over now. Sorry about that. Anyway, as I was talking about, let me make sure that's off here. Okay. Yeah. So even if it was a man or a woman exposing their genitals, you would think you didn't want your children to be watching that. Just my opinion, Check out this. This was I played this while you guys were watching here. Let me see if I can redo it because that's not it. But anyway, this guy just got his medication here and almost killed these people as he nodded off, passing out right after he went to go get the new, nice, cool medication. Ain't that sweet? And check this out. Some guy that, stopped a gunman, he was repaid by the police by them shooting him dead. He did make a fatal mistake, in my opinion, though, where he picked up the suspect's AR-15, and when police arrived, they thought he was the shooter and killed him. One cop got killed by the gunman, and then they killed the supposed hero that stopped the gunman. How about that? That's something else I was reading. I thought you guys might find this cool. There's a lot of people that think that some of these petroglyphs in the area of New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah might be Chinese. And I'm going to get into this on another story because they match an ancient Chinese style of writing. So I am going to do a whole show on that. Check this out. Sam Altman wants to scan your eyeballs in exchange for cryptocurrency, kind of moving into the same thing that a lot of other tech giants are starting to do, where they're going to have to attach everything from your money to your social credit score, even your retinal scans, facial scans, the gait in your walk, your voice, your fingerprints. I mean, what information do they not want is the question, I guess. And just like kind of we were talking about all year, they give everybody a little bit of break and a little bit of hope and then put them back down in a lockdown. Half of Australia's population in a lockdown as COVID-19 supposed Delta variant spreads. One town in Australia even completely closed down, only having one person test positive. Abu Dhabi will only allow vaccinated people in some of their public squares, which I've seen several articles around the country talking about. They're only going to let the vaccinated, go to their shopping malls, their stores, etc. And I just thought you guys might think this is funny. Elections say they added test ballots and they were counted with actual ballots as part of a ranked choice voting program. But don't pay attention to this and numerous other people being arrested for voter fraud. It doesn't exist. Heart inflammation after people get their medications higher than expected in a study of the U.S. military. Well, whatever. And check this out. This guy's parasailing here, and this ain't even the right video. Anyway, this one's a cool thing, but let me reload it here so you guys can see this guy. So he's just parasailing along, and this shark jumps up and bites a chunk out of his foot. He had to go to the hospital. He had severe bone, tendon, and meat injuries and trauma. If you can actually see that, it's kind of blurry, but yeah, shark just jumped up and bit him. Too hot? Not for robots. Don't worry about it. If you're complaining about the heat and you don't want to go to work, if there even is work where you're at, because they're trying to close everything down again. But don't worry about that. Robots, like I've told you for a long time, will just take that niche of human society and they'll do it for you. They won't complain about it's hot. And if you're worried about the island of Dr. Monroe or, stories like Jurassic Park, well, rest assured, real scientists really are bringing things back to life and cloning things. Scientists revived and cloned a 24,000-year-old zombie buried under Siberian permafrost. A zombie, it's a single-celled organism, but don't worry about it. They brought it back. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? And I told you earlier about the bee. It's the communist bees. No, I'm just joking. They're a clone bee outpopulating the normal honeybee, so we'll see how that goes. Pretty bizarre. Earth supposedly is trapping twice as much heat as it did in 2005, and you would go through this article and find a bunch of omissions again from our lovely NASA people. Now, I advise that you guys read this. I'm not going to read the whole thing on here because I'll probably get in trouble for all the keywords in it. But you should go look it up. CDC, government, there's that word, COVID, health department, blah, blah, blah. There's the, I know you guys are smart enough to see the link right up there. You can copy that link, push pause, type it in another window. Anyway, it gets into how there's breakthrough cases, meaning after people are fully medicated, they still get sick. And they go through and talk about all of these problems, but yet they're still saying, don't worry about it, it's safe and effective, and it works. Even though it might not work. Even after getting multiples, you still might get it. Maybe there will be a variant and maybe it won't work as good, but don't worry about it. I recommend here from 420 TV that you get every single one of those, just so I don't get banned. And in case you missed it, major blow against Assange case as the witness admits that he lied and was coerced by the government to basically make up some bullshit. Web warnings, Google will warn you about fake news websites before you click on them, so don't worry. You don't need to make your own decisions. Google will do that for you. And I wanted to point out this. It's not just men that are pedos. This one was drugging kids and having relations with them. She was sentenced to 102 years. Just look at her. And she thought it was perfectly okay until she got in trouble. And there's lots of these twisted stories out there. I mean, you can see several right up here. 5-year-olds giving birth, just all kinds of stuff. And then this kind of stuff. And you're trying to tell me that, demons don't walk the earth? And they write a whole story talking about how you're bad if you don't like kinky stuff with your little kids. And that you should accept it and you should like it and you should just take your kids and... what could go wrong? Don't worry about it. Just do it. Do it. And then, of course, we showed you how certain individuals are getting hit pieces written on them about just simply bringing you ideas. How crazy is that? And again, we live in this crazy world. 24,000-year-old zombies. Yes, I put it up there twice just to let you sink it in. They're bringing back stuff. They're tinkering with DNA. They're making chimeras. But at the same time, they're telling you that, they're going to control all of the information, censor health misinformation, whatever other information they think is misinformation. And look at this. Just read that title. Their biggest crimes of that thing that's going around. I'll say it 3 times. But tell me now, Navy ditches futuristic rail gun. If you're not here to see me through, something playing in the background. I'll fix that by just doing this. Boom! We're living in the Twilight Zone. Anyway, that's all I got for 420 TV. Looks like I was having some technical difficulties. Sorry about that. That happens when you're live. But anyway, peace out. That's all I got for 420 TV. The time is 4:20. It's partly cloudy, at least it is for me, and I hope you guys have a good night.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines,